There are many things about the films from Studio Ghibli that make them so iconic, but one of the things that makes them perhaps instantly recognizable is the music. Today I want to talk about the music from one film in particular. It's perhaps the most popular film from Studio Ghibli, and that is, of course, Spirited Away. Now, if you watch this channel, you'll know that I'm not necessarily very well versed in different anime. It's not something that I consume on a regular basis, but I will say that Spirited Away is a film that I have seen numerous times, and I've always thought that it's absolutely fantastic, and I think one of the reasons for that is, of course, the brilliant music in the soundtrack. And that score is the work of Joe Hisaishi, who we've talked about a little bit on this channel in the past. And for those of you who are not familiar with the film, it was released in 2001 by Studio Ghibli. It won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, making it the first and to date, the only hand-drawn non-English language animated film to win the award. So let's dive into a couple of the pieces from this soundtrack and try to break down what makes them so iconic. And before we continue, I just want to remind you, if you want to learn how to play a lot of this stuff, you want to learn how to play the piano in general, we have a great course that will help you do that, and it's currently 30% off using code MUSIC3030. There's a link in the description. That's the best way you can support the channel. Okay, let's go. I don't mean to stop already, but like, that first chord is just phenomenal, and it's a great representation of spreading out a particular voicing, because really what this is, right, it is an F major 7 add 9 chord, and that just means it's an F major 7, and then we simply add 9, which is that G. Now here's the thing, this is what makes it so cool. We have taken these notes, and you'll notice right here we have the G, the A, and the E, and this completes that voicing. However, we're gonna throw those three notes up an octave. Same thing that was here, but now we're just moving it up here. That's it. And by doing that, we create this new voicing that has the same quality. It still sounds like that F major 7 add 9 chord. However, the space that gets created, like that, for example, this sort of initial stacked fifths, we have a fifth there, and then a fifth there, right? And then we add our third and our seventh, but up in this octave instead of down where the chord originally was played. And that's how we get that sound. It's a very simple sound, but it's beautiful, and especially when we divvy up the notes like that and create a little bit of space, create more of a shell rather than a cluster, right? That would be more of a cluster. This creates a little bit more of a shell. Creating space in your chords can be one of the most effective ways to derive new types of sounds out of the same chord that you've always played. There's so many ways to create interesting sounds, and this is a great example of that. And that's the first chord of the whole thing. It's just beautiful. Okay. Yeah, take a look at those voicings. So what we're using now is a series of essentially chords that are built on stacked fourths. Now, this is what we might call quartal harmony, not chordal like chord, but quarter like quarter, quartal harmony. So a really great way to practice these if you want to start getting a handle on sort of the stacked fourth shape is just, first of all, you can do it just chromatically. Or if you want to get a little more specific, because sometimes that's a little easy because you're just moving each finger by a half step each time. What's harder is if you throw an octave in between. That sounds like this. Ah, there it is. Okay. Not perfect, but the reason that is so effective is because every time you pick your hands up, now you've got to find the chord again. Even though you're finding the same chord, it still forces your fingers to have to place them once again, starting from no hands on the piano. Stacked fourths are really, really fun to play around with, and they really kind of create that jazz sound, which is one of the reasons why Spirited Away sounds so cool, especially with these really intricate piano parts, is because we're using a lot of these stacked fourths. Now check out the application of those stacked fourths. Woo! Wow! Then, this sound creeps in, and we have our melody. Right? Okay, so far, we've heard this melody, but we don't yet understand it. And what I mean by that is we've heard this. Can you tell me what the harmony is here? Because that's all we have, and then we have a melody. That's not very outlining of any particular harmonic function. And this, I mean, that could be a number of things. I mean, it could be over a G, it could be over a D, it could be over an E. I mean, there's so many different ways that you could apply just those three notes. And so it kind of creates this ambiguous sort of vague sound. We don't really know yet what we're supposed to feel. Now, those of you who know the music know that it eventually evolves into this beautiful thing. And it's called One Summer's Day. That's literally the title. So yeah, it's going to have a sort of relaxing, happy kind of sound, but we don't know that yet. It almost gives you the feeling that like something odd may happen, but we're still kind of able to just sort of relax and listen to it because there's nothing super ominous or foreboding yet. But it does sort of leave you with some questions. And that is, of course, until we have the rest of the orchestra coming in, and good Lord, is it incredibly beautiful. Listen to this. Okay, so we're starting to define this harmony. We hear that 4-chord movement. By the way, we're thinking of this whole thing as though C is kind of the home base. And so we hear this F, and here's our melody again. Right? And then we hear it evolve. But the interesting thing about this is that still, if you listen to the voicing in the strings, hear that? Right? So we have this sharp 4 going on. Which, the way that's voiced in the strings is incredibly beautiful. But it still maintains just a little bit of this like, There's our 1 chord. Okay, so we went from, we stayed here, but we now hear this note. So it's almost implying this 4, 5, 1, and we don't go to the minor 6, but there's sort of a taste of it in there, because we hear 4, 5, 1, and then that 6 does appear. There it is. Ah. Climbing up. Now watch this. Woo! Wow! We've talked a lot about minor 4 on this channel. It is one of my favorite chords, and this is a really interesting usage of it because it's not used in maybe the same way that you might typically think, which is this. Instead, we're using it in this context of a walk-up. That is so interesting. And we have the minor 7th in there, which is a nice addition to that, and it just creates a little bit of like your ear kind of latches onto it and is like, oh, we haven't heard anything like that before, because everything before that is pretty much diatonic. We have C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. Those are all the diatonic naturally existing triads within the key of C major. So to hear this, that's a new sound, and our ears go, oh, I like that. Okay, yeah. What we typically hear in this Ghibli sort of sound that is so recognizable and so iconic is a brilliant usage of simple harmony, but not shying away from using the complex movements and really intelligently written things like voice leading, for example. Again, in the context of C major, we have our 4 chord, but then we're setting up the minor 6, right? We're setting up this chord with a 5 in front of it. And then this E, which we would consider to be sort of a subdom, secondary dominant, because normally it would be E minor, in the key of C major. So we have this E dominant, this E7 sharp 9, which is a nice dissonant spread here. And the melody is playing that sharp 9, which is one of the reasons I think that's a really beautiful chord, because the melody works around it so well. And then after we have this iconic theme that everybody knows, we get into the next part, which is this walk down. So we've done a walk up. Now we do a walk down. Check it out. Again. And then we have a brilliant usage of a 5 setup into a new harmonic space by going to this F minor sound now. So we've created an expectation when the first time and then we do it a second time. And when we get to the part where we start to expect that same turnaround that we had the first time, now we're doing a setup into F minor, and now we're in a new space. But we go somewhere different entirely. Very briefly there, we almost set up a return to the top. We hear this G sus chord that has been used so far to set up, only now we're going somewhere completely different. And something interesting happens here. Check this out. Remember the intro melody? All of those that are being passed around the orchestra in different keys, that's a callback to the original melody. Right? That part at the beginning that we heard, that is brilliant thematic development. Let's take a look at something a little bit different. This is such a cool piece. Check this out. That right there, when I was listening to this, and tell me if you guys had a similar experience with this, but it almost sounded to me like, because they're so far apart, they are the same note, but having such a different timbre at either end of the piano, I almost didn't even feel like it was the same note in a weird way. Whoo! Yeah. Crunch, dissonance. And then how about some circle of fifths? Let's look at that for a second. That's really great. We have this right? So we're going, you could keep on going with that. Where would it go? Am I getting this right? Am I right? I don't know, something like something like that. But basically, we have these, again, this chordal harmony, these stacked fourths that we've seen used throughout this so far, and we're simply taking a figure like that and just moving it around. This is really cool, okay? Okay, so this demonstrates how you can do so many different things just with something like triads. But if you put triads over a dissonant note, all of a sudden they adopt this entirely new feel. Check this out. Listen to that. Listen to this. Whoa! Then we bring up the intensity a little bit. Same thing, now just instead of using root position chords, we're now using first inversion. But then watch this, we go into this incredibly beautiful section. Wow. Wow, straight out of an Impressionist era style composition, something you might hear from Debussy or Ravel. We kind of get the feeling that maybe that's home, but it's not really defined with any certainty, but hauntingly beautiful. And before we run out of time, I want to talk about one other track. This one's Reprise, and it's a great example of some of the other components that make the Ghibli sound so recognizable. Check this out. G major is our home bass here. Very basic functional harmony, but the way that it's written, it's not afraid to dig into the complex inner workings of that harmony. So we get a lot of these inner voice movements and chromatic movements. If we take, for example, maybe some American movies that people like Hans Zimmer, for example. Let's take a look at Hans Zimmer. So we have Interstellar, for example. I mean, so much of Interstellar was... And it was amazing because the usage of pads and a whole bunch of other effects and things that go into creating the sound that is Interstellar, that was where they derived a lot of the effect rather than the harmonic complexity. But even some of Hans's other work... not a lot of chromatic movement. And if we look at somebody else like John Williams, you get a lot of chromatic movement, but it's in a very different way. It oftentimes doesn't utilize a lot of this somewhat jazz standard-based harmony that we might consider to be a little simpler in theory. Oftentimes John Williams will just completely go off the rails and use some crazy whacked out harmony that isn't really rooted in a lot of this stuff. But one of the things that makes Joe Hisaishi's work so incredibly iconic and why so many people I think love it is because it does have that harmonic complexity while being rooted in much more simplicity. It's a brilliant combination that gives you things that will challenge your ear without pulling you out of the environment that it's trying to create. And if you're wondering how I'm able to take a lot of these chords and create super lush things, it's of course a skill set developed over many, many years of playing. However, you can get your start on the piano if you've always wanted to play and support the channel while you're doing so by using the link down in the description and checking out the Intro to Piano course, which is currently 30% off with code MusicTheory30. Since most of the stuff that we create, it gets claimed and, you know, somebody else just comes and takes all the money. That's the best way you can support the channel and help ensure that we can continue making stuff like this for you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing so, and thank you for watching this video. We will see you in the next one.